It's time we understood the lifelong impacts of living with chronic pain. Welcome back to another episode of Irrepressible, ordinary people with extraordinary resilience. Today I speak to the extraordinary Dani, and Dani talks us through her life of living with chronic pain, from somebody that started their lives as being incredibly into sports like netball and all the other team games and being incredibly athletic, to finding herself as a young teenager with chronic pain and the implications of never being heard and understood in the suffering that she experienced as a result of that pain. I never knew quite just how bad the impacts of living with chronic pain could be, and so I'm really happy that I was able to do this interview with Dani today. There's lots to take away, particularly if you've ever suffered with chronic pain, but there's lots that we can all learn from Dani's story, and Dani articulates in a really powerful way her experiences of living with this pain. So I really hope you take as much as I do from this interview. If this is the first time that you've ever been here, please make sure that you have subscribed and you turn on the notifications so you know each and every time that we post a video too. Enjoy the interview. So Dani, I'm really excited to have this conversation today. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Just juggling crappy internet connections and no water at home. But hey ho, that's resilience, right?
Yeah, exactly. The best way to start a resilience conversation. So rather than me tell everyone who you are, why don't you just quickly tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing in the world today?
So my name's Dani. I am originally from sunny Bolton in the northwest of England, but I now live in Dubai, the Middle East, and I've been here for nearly 13 years now, which is a long time. It's a place you come for a year, you kind of pay your debts off, and then you jump ship. But I've kind of made it my home, and what's really sort of sealed the deal is the journey that I've been on here, working in agencies, marketing consultancy, connecting with the healthcare industry, realizing that there's a huge gap to fill around mental health. And we actually started a mental health initiative called Safe Space about 18 months ago. So it's my third baby because I've got two real children, and it's very much an opportunity for us to bring some accessibility to mental health here in the region, which doesn't exist. It's a very complex place when it comes to mental health specifically, because it has so many different layers of taboos and stigmas and challenges and costs that are attached to even getting stuck into it. So it's become my purpose, it's my passion, it's my job, it's what I do, and I'm just really grateful to have the opportunity to talk more about this stuff, really. So yeah, we help corporates very much to align their organizations, provide more supportive places to work. And we also help people in the community. It's the work that we do with the corporates that helps us to do the community stuff with no charge attached to it, which is good. It seems to be getting a good response so far. So
right, I didn't know so much about the community side of it that you do, that the corporate kind of helps you to do that with no cost.
Well, that's how we started. So 18 months ago, the founders, and we had a committee meeting on like January the 19th, 2019, and very much, how do we bring some light to this topic? How do we help all the people that need help? And actually in that committee meeting, there was just such an array of incredible professionals from all different sort of spectrums of mental health, from therapists, psychologists, counselors, coaches, yoga instructors, meditation gurus. And it was like, okay, there's loads of people over here that can help. There's loads of people over here that need help, and it's just about bringing them together. So we started off as a meetup. It was every Wednesday in a really cute tea house, and we bring the professionals who knew their stuff and the people that wanted to hear this stuff. And that was Safe Space, how it looked, about 18 months ago. But here in Dubai, there's a lot of loopholes. You can't just be a community group, even though we're just trying to help. We had to put a little bit more of a structure around it. So we had to have a license. So we became a sort of social enterprise, as kind of the rest of the world sort of knows how that operates. Here it's still sort of new territory. And we work with corporates in order to have just a core team that enables us to do the work in the community. So the communities are why. That's our kind of reason for being.
Wow. And I think everybody should check Safe Space out, because I love your what do you call it? Like your narrative and your core values are very, I think that's why we connected, right? Because it's what you say is very similar to my core values and beliefs.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about resilience, resilience beyond you having no water in the house today and Wi-Fi. So why don't we get straight into it, and you tell me a little bit about some of the adversity that you faced that's meant that you've had to be resilient.
It's funny because when I think I'm just such a stubborn person. I've always just taken my sort of path for granted. And I've never really looked back at what I've been through as traumatic. I think when you think of the word trauma, you think of abuse, growing up with alcoholic parents, things that are more kind of, let's say, stereotypically traumatic. And really, when I started sort of struggling with back pain, which was when I was sort of 16, 17 years old, I have quite a high pain threshold. I'd crack on. I'd still kind of get through. Never really been able to get an answer where this back pain was coming from. I was told I was still growing, which was great because I was only 5'6". I had 6 foot tall parents, so I thought, this is it. I'm going to be a supermodel. I'm just growing. This is awesome news. And it just didn't stop, and it just got worse, and it just got worse. But really, I think because it has, and now what I can look back at as being something that has been very traumatic to deal with, I've just suppressed it, just put it under everything else, built everything else on top, and just kind of carried on with life. And it's only really recently, like actually literally in the past few months, where I've really given it the credit or given it the sort of label of being kind of something that's really sort of defined who I am. Every time I sort of meet with people, and I sort of we get talking about like chronic pain, it's such an invisible thing, and it's not like I have, a scar or I don't even have a limp or a crutch, or you can't really see what that's going through. I think because it's not been anything that's the outside world has ever also been able to quantify. That's another reason why I've put it to the kind of bottom of the pile. So from being 16 and being, playing every sport, literally, maybe not like the best sports person, but I was like the B team captain. That was my kind of like space, a leader, maybe not first team, but I played everything: tennis, rounders, netball. I was really good at swimming. It just all started to slow down because my body couldn't keep up. And actually dealing with pain is just it's just really annoying. There's like constant just a constant thing that's just holding you back. You can't run as fast, you can't move as fast. I could barely, by the time I was sort of 19, even dress myself properly. I couldn't really put my own socks or shoes on. The girls that I lived with at uni were the ones that kind of would get me out the door in the morning fast in my shoes. I'd just kind of turn to wearing, it was in Edinburgh, so it was really cold, so I couldn't just wear flip-flops, but I had to at least find something that was just easy to kind of get out the door and get to sort of class. So it was just one of those things that I think as well, because the healthcare systems really never gave it credit to. I just didn't believe that I could give it credit. And it was kind of too late, really, before it was really addressed. I was operated on when I was about 20. Turned out I'd sort of slipped a few discs, and the bottom of my spine had started to fuse. It had all kind of calcified again because I'd been told that I was growing, but I wasn't. My pain was never really heard, even from the doctors, which was 16-year-olds don't have back pain. And it was really, I really only know now how traumatic that has been on my life, not being heard, the basic human rights, and actually that being suppressed and me being kind of told different has really had huge impacts. Now I don't trust. I'm not really able to let go. I don't really I don't know, it's made me very sort of skeptical about medicine in general. It's made me really sort of reevaluate things. So yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah.
It's been really tough.
In those like your late teens, in like when you were 16, between 16 and 20, I guess it would have almost like you were being gaslighted all the time, right? Because you're sort of complaining of this pain, but then if the professionals are just saying, look, you're just growing, and yet the pain must have been getting worse, right? If you had slipped
Yeah,
discs and stuff.
I was on, and this is what just doesn't make sense. When I look back through kind of hindsight's always a great thing, right? But I look back and I was on triple strength ibuprofen 3 times a day for about 2.5 years. That's not good for anybody's
No.
GI tract at all. But I was also self-medicating. I was at uni. I was having the time of my life. I was partying as hard as I could. And that was an escape for me at that time. That was my medicine. And it was, I remember going to the doctors. It's still a little bit of a sort of blur, I think, because I was probably hungover all the time as well. But the doctor's appointment where they said, yes, you probably have depression. So here's some antidepressants. And I was just like, okay, well, that makes sense. Of course, I'm really sad. I'm really struggling. So maybe this is what it is. And I started taking that medication, which sent me a little bit kind of, it didn't sit with me chemically, I think, at that point, with other sort of chemicals that were going on as well. So it was just a very, felt like a very quick fix for the doctor to say, here, just take this medication. And I probably just wasn't wise enough to really push back and say, well, yeah, of course I'm depressed, but is anyone going to give me any context to this? So I'm taking really strong painkillers and an antidepressant and self-medicating and just getting through. This is not going to go anywhere good. But it was just all I knew at that point. You have to, as a law-abiding citizen, at some point you take what a doctor says to you and you're just like, okay, right, no worries, that kind of makes sense. But it didn't make sense. It really didn't. And it's really, from a like digestion perspective, from a building on the foundation, becoming an adult on those sort of rocky foundations of sort of late teens, it's been really difficult. It's taken me decades to kind of come back around.
Yeah. So how long were you on the antidepressants for? Did that come to an end, or?
I don't remember. I remember just stopping them, and I remember that was bad. But it wasn't that long. I think it was like between like 6 months and a year. And this is weird. It's like, how can I not really remember that point of my, like, I'm 37. It's not like this was like too long, 20 years ago. But that point in my life is just really vague, very, very vague.
You've probably blocked a lot of it out, do you think?
Yeah, completely. Because I think, but I always put it down to sort of being stubborn and having a high pain threshold and just kind of, I don't know, it's my sort of like northern upbringing, just sort of crack on and get on with things, that I just never gave it real credit. I think if I'd have been it's that sort of borderline between resilience and stupidity, really just taking things on face value, what someone's kind of told you to believe. But I just didn't know any better. And I see now how any sort of therapy or, holistic therapy or traditional therapy I've done since then, they always go back to the back stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm over that. Like, would I live with pain? Done, halas. That's an every word. Just like, we just crack on. We just, this is how I live. And they always, I think, sort of second guess it. And I've just brushed it under the carpet. And it's only now, like, literally, I started working with a therapist to just deal with this back pain stuff, because it's just, it's deep. It's really, really deep.
Yeah. I mean, just trying to see how I can relate to your experiences. As somebody who is massively into sport myself, I still play football at a semi-decent level now in my life today, and I get niggles in my back. But when that's bad and it means that I can't do sport for a day or two, I mean, it kills me, right? And if I have a long period of and I don't have long periods of time out injured, because I'll just go back and play, right? Because I haven't had a bad enough injury that proper sidelines me. But I can, for that to happen sort of in your prime age of like 16, when sport is everything, and for it to just indefinitely stop, and you feel like you're almost being made to feel like it was kind of in your head. I mean, that must have been so. It's no wonder that you've blocked it out and don't remember it very well.
Yeah, it's strange because even at the time, I don't think that I really. There was the one pivotal moment. So after my operation, so ideally the point where I've been healed through the surgery, and I was sat with my surgeon. I was in the ward that I was in, it was a neurology ward. It was just the lady opposite me was like paralyzed from the neck down. The lady in the bed next to me had a tube coming out of her head, draining fluids off her brain. Like it was, it was rough. And the surgeon sort of came and was just like ticking the chart at the end of the bed, and he was just sort of looking at me like, I've done my work now, anything to say. Didn't ask me any questions, didn't ask me how I was feeling, didn't give me no bedside manner, just ticked his boxes. You're done now, we can release you. And I just burst into tears, and I was like, no one can see what this has done to me. And it was only that moment where like the tears were always like horizontal. Like I was done, like absolutely done. But that was the point where I was supposed to be fixed. It had obviously got me to that point that I'd really started to have some consideration of what had actually happened. But he brushed it off. He was a surgeon. He wasn't a therapist. He wasn't a psychologist. He'd gone in there, done this very intricate surgery, and we moved on. And he moved to the next bed. I just sat there like sobbing, like, oh, this isn't how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that was a deep moment. So where do I go from here? What do I do next? So yeah, it was tricky.
So now you find yourself doing what you're doing today, right? So you're obviously, I mean, we're talking about resilience. You've obviously had a lot of resilience to be able to come through and be, even creating what you're creating in the world today. What would you cite as being the things that have enabled you to be resilient? If somebody was like looking in and wanting to learn from your story, what would you say are the things that you did that enabled you to come through it in the way that you have? I guess it's still ongoing as well.
It's still ongoing. Yeah, I don't see the end to it just yet. But I've always been a curious person. I was the child that asked why, and I think even after the operation, and I was given sort of physiotherapy, NHS physiotherapy, which is just go do an exercise 3 times a week and come back. I was like, there's got to be more. There's got to be something other than this. And I took myself to sort of Pilates school, and again, because I'd done research and I'd tried to figure out, okay, well, maybe it's my core strength that I need to sort of start building up. Forget about any bigger muscle groups. That's where I need to start. So that's something that became my replacement for physiotherapy. And then I was like, well, there must be something around body alignment. I got into more holistic treatments, and I went to my first one, and that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to a kind of holistic healing, which obviously there's so many different modalities within that, but it's like, oh, well, so there is another world other than doctors and nurses. So okay, and it was my curiosity that just kept opening doors and kept reading things and speaking to people, and just trying to piece together, like almost being like a little bit of a detective of what had kind of gone wrong here and what had happened. And that is it's an ongoing journey. I think there's only probably last year and sort of getting Safe Space up and running did I realize that was supposed to be my path. I was supposed to have felt those things. I was supposed to have gone through that stuff, and it's made me a more empathetic, compassionate, worldly wise, understanding individual. And I wouldn't be the best person to do what I'm doing today if I hadn't have gone through my trauma. Like anything, I wouldn't have the same impact or be able to have the same impact as I do today. And that's always difficult when you're kind of going through stuff to actually just think, okay, well, this is for me, this is a learning opportunity. When you're in a pit, you're like, whoa, I didn't ask for this. But again, with that sort of hindsight and looking back, and it's made me now a bit more resilient to deal with anything that kind of crops up. That it's like, okay, I've been through stuff before, still here, actually probably a better person for it. And that really just keeps me moving forward and keeps me being curious and wanting to know. So yeah, it's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I love that you've talked about curiosity, because like I just think that is like the keystone to anything to do with emotional health and like the way that we react to things. That curiosity, that always asking why, that kind of almost literally taking nothing as like hard, fast solution and always challenging it. Like I always say that one of the best things I've done in the last 8 years on my journey is literally every day allow myself to believe that I might be wrong about everything that I know about myself. And that is like ultimate curiosity. And then you also, I really relate to what you said about when you're going through difficult times, when you like now, when I think I might not get through this, because you don't do it, right? When you're in the difficult times, you think, oh, this is the one. But actually when you've had those life experiences, I can look back at my life now and I always think to myself, it's not really going to get much worse than that. And I've come through that as a better person. So I think it helps you going forward. So I guess because I'm a little bit conscious of time, what if you could like extract from everything that you know that we've talked about, what do you think the big learning about yourself is that people can take away from your experiences?
I think there's a couple of things. I think from my perspective, like taking things for granted, you know, I wish it was something that maybe I learned at a very young age. I felt that I had to learn it the hard way almost. And it just makes me, now I've got my own kids and I sort of see the opportunity that we have to really give them a more well-rounded view of what's really happening in the world versus, you know, maybe what we kind of grew up with. I think it's just, it's that opportunity to kind of have no horizon, almost just, and anything goes, which takes real bravery, takes real courage to even sort of think that way sometimes, because it's against the grain. But that's what I think it's going to take for a lot of these barriers to come down across everything, you know, not just in health, not just in mental health. And we don't celebrate that enough. And that's kind of something I think if I'd have maybe just had a little bit more of that in my toolbox. I grew up as a pretty normal teenager, but I think I was very, you know, blinkered in my approach. Just, there was nothing really, very small sort of village upbringing, was nothing more to it than that. So I just think we've got a huge opportunity ahead of us to do more, to think differently.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you want to use your experiences in that way as well. I think, like, you know, we find acceptance of what we've been through, and we kind of say to ourselves, you know, I've been through that. It made me stronger. In a way, I can almost be glad that I went through it. But I do think there's also that bit of what you've just said there, which is young people can be strong and sort of resilient and courageous in the way that we have been without going through some of the things that you had to go through. And you do that by passing on learnings and giving it to people younger. So I think, you know, it's incredible that the work that you're doing in the world today and you're using them experiences to hopefully, that's probably again why we've connected, because it's about using those personal experiences and saying, you know what, there is tangible learning to take from this that we can help install in one another.
Yeah.
So before we end, where's the best place for people to find you? I'll link everything about Safe Space and that in the comment section of this anyway. But if people want to reach out to you or speak to you more, is there somewhere that they can come and find you?
Yeah, so our website is wearesafespace.com, and we are available on Instagram, and that's kind of where we're doing most of our kind of stuff at the moment, you know, talking about unpacking some of these things. But we have daily free sessions which we run. So they're informative, educational, uplifting opportunities for people to kind of sit with, you know, mental health, mental well-being professionals, again, of all different shapes, sizes. Today we're talking about cognitive wellness in the workplace. Tomorrow we're talking to a Paralympian about her experience. So we're really trying to bring these experiences. So if you're somebody that has a story, that has an expertise, please get in touch, and we'd most definitely love to host you on our platform for our community. And if you want to join any of the sessions and listen in, then we're here 5 days a week, completely free of charge.
Completely free of charge. That's amazing. Yeah. So everybody should check it out. And like I say, I'll link it in the comments and in all the stuff that we put out. Dani, this has been incredible. I feel like I've learned quite a bit from this session myself. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you've been able to share. And I know a lot of people will get so much from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.